I had no clue what I was doing. I just talked to everybody that if you came on the lot and you moved, I would pounce on you. And I just talked to you. I didn't know how to sell. At least I didn't know that I knew how to sell. And then I would bring them inside and just ask my manager, like, they want to buy it. And then they would go talk to them. And next thing I know, they were leaving in a car.
Tell us about your life before real estate. Tell us about that climb through the auto industry and getting burnt out.
So ran out of high school. I joined the U.S. Army. When I came home from the Army, didn't really have an application for my MOS that I'd used in the military back in civilian life. I was an avionics communications repairman, which is just a fancy way of saying I fix radios of helicopters. And so I came home back to York, PA, and there wasn't really an application for that. So I just started searching the newspaper for jobs. And one that caught my eye was I think it was called a lot porter. And the little description just said that, you drive around cars. I looked up the dealership. It was a Mercedes and a Toyota dealership. I was like, man, that seems kind of cool. So I went into the dealership, had an interview, and got hired. I was making, I don't know, $7-8 an hour or something like that, which back in 96 seemed like a pretty decent amount of money. And it was fun. And, I didn't have any kids or expenses or anything then. So all that money was mine. And did a pretty good job. I showed up early. I stayed late. Ended up having like another job opening over in the detail department in the evenings where you would clean cars for the sales staff before they would deliver them in the evening. So I came in and I was working from like 6:30 a.m. till like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But at that age, it was no big deal, right? It was like pretty cool when I was making a bunch of money, got my first house, and someone noticed. I'm like, dude, this guy works an awful lot. They happen to have like a assistant service manager position open, who's kind of like the sales rep in the service department. When your car comes in, they'll advise you on any routine maintenance that it needs, or, your brakes are getting awful low. You might want to think about doing them while you're here. And they hired me for that job. And I think my salary was like $40,000 a year. And then there were some incentives, spiffs that you would get if you hit certain sales targets. Turns out I was pretty good at, I didn't realize it was sales, but it's what it was. Where I would go out with the technician and go, hey man, you got to get these 6 things done. And I was like, I'd never changed my oil, never rotated my tires. I didn't know anything about cars. So just ask questions like, well, George, when you say they need this service, why in the heck would they do that? That's a lot of money. They would explain it to me, and then I would run inside while it was still fresh in my mind, call the customer and say, George said you should get this done. He's a really good technician, and here's why. And like most of the people would say, okay, sounds good. Can you still get it back to me at 5 o'clock? And I go, hold on. George, can I get it back by 5 o'clock? And they go, yeah. Okay, yeah, you can have it back by 5 o'clock. We'll have the bill waiting for you. Okay, cool. So I was selling all this service. So I kept making more money. I got promoted to service manager. And after doing that for maybe 2 years, I caught the attention of the sales manager. They invited me out to be a salesperson. I eventually said yes. My first day on the sales floor was June 17th. By the end of June, I actually got Salesman of the Month that month. I sold like 21 cars in 13 days. I had no clue what I was doing. I just talked to everybody that if you came on the lot and you moved, I would pounce on you. And I just talked to you. I didn't know how to sell. At least I didn't know that I knew how to sell. And then I would bring them inside and just ask my manager, like, they want to buy it. And then they would go talk to them. And next thing I know, they were leaving in a car. So and then I got promoted to finance manager and then sales manager and the general sales manager. And after 8 years, I was the general sales manager of the dealership. It was a large franchise. We sold about 300 cars a month, had 200 employees. And I was about to have my first child and knew that I couldn't be a good car guy and a good dad at the same time because of the demands and the hours. So made the decision to part ways with the car business and spent about 3 months just kind of looking around and doing some soul searching. And after talking to a few people, and my father decided that real estate would probably be the direction I would go. And then one of the advantages we really had at the dealership that I worked at is we always had a really good understanding and I would say a strong hold on the financial portion of selling cars. Like, we were one of the first innovators in our area to do leasing at a high level, which basically just gave people the ability to buy a $50,000 Forerunner, let's say, for a $400 car payment, which is kind of unheard of, right? It's probably a $900 car payment if you finance it. So we were just experts at leasing programs. So people would come there if they're like, hey, I want an expensive car, but I want a cheap payment. We became, people would drive from hundreds of miles to come to buy cars from us. And then we were really good at helping people with bad credit. So with that experience, I thought that I should start in finance to sort of learn, my way up through real estate, and got a job at a mortgage company, and I was just cold calling refinance leads, and was doing really well at it. If you think about the average money you make on a loan versus the average money you make on a car, I could do way less business and make way more money. So I was in love from almost day one. And it was cool, right? Because you're helping people out. Like, generally, I'm lowering their payment. I'm helping them consolidate bills. Like, it felt good. And after doing that for about, it was a couple months, my mentor from the car business called me and said, hey, I heard you're in real estate. I heard this radio commercial about flipping houses. It seems kind of cool, and I'd like to start up a real estate company, and was interested or seeing if you might want to partner up and do houses together. So we had lunch, a couple days later, and we were off and running. Bought like 70 homes our first full year. So that's my path or journey from high school to real estate.